Alright, the 2024 to 2025 snowboard season should be starting soon. It's going to be a La Nina year here in Portland, so hopefully we get snow early this year because I didn't even get my first day riding until last year in January. I mean, that's the latest I've ever ridden. Crazy. So I'm going to be going into my, I guess, 5th year of riding now. Technically, I started riding at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, but I was still on the bunny slope. And then COVID happened in obviously early 2020, so that was like a half year. I also broke my arm in 2019, so that put a hamper. So I'm pretty much wiping out most of that year. I only got to ride a few times. I did make a few videos. I went to Loveland Ski Resort and some other places, but essentially we're just going to stick with this being my 5th full year of snowboarding. So if you guys have been following my journey, you can see my progression, which I would say is pretty decent for somebody who didn't start snowboarding at all until their late 20s. I mean, I didn't even get on the bunny slope and take lessons until I went to Arizona Snowbowl a few years ago. So I am a little delayed with learning to snowboard. Luckily, I skated before, but that's totally different. Skateboarding, snowboarding, not the same. If you're good at skating, doesn't mean you're going to be good at snowboarding, and vice versa. So also, Indy Pass picked up Loveland this year, so maybe I can actually go back because I was still a beginner when I went there. Anyways, I'm not going to ramble too long, but the whole point of this video is let's get hyped for the snowboard season upcoming. There's going to be a ton of snow hopefully happening, a lot of deep powder days. I have my all mountain park board. It's a little stiffer, got a camber, all that, capped at Outer Space Living, still going strong, actually holding up after a few years. And I have my Burton ripcord. It was my beginner board. Luckily, with the setback, I slid it all the way back with the Burton channel system, and it's a 158 wide, so you know, it's a little longer, and it's a totally just like reverse camber flat board, so that should help in powder. So I use that as a powder board, not a real powder board, but it's definitely better than this sucker. It sinks in powder. Yeah, I mean, it says you can ride in powder, but you're just gonna kill your back leg. So here's a recap of the last bit of the season of the 2023 to 2024 season, which I progressed, got some cool tricks. So let's check out the highlights of the 2023 to 2024 snowboard season. I got to ride with Jonathan Buckhouse and a bunch of other cool people. Traveled, went to a ton of different states, and I don't even know how many resorts I went to, but here's a montage of the new tricks I learned, some of the best powder days I had, and you know, some of the goofiest falls that I've had. So enjoy, and let me know which mountain you ride during the year, because I travel everywhere. Maybe we can collab, link up, I don't know. Just leave a comment below, tell me where you ride, and enjoy the little montage of my 4th full year of snowboarding. So the season kind of started off pretty slow. This is me at the bunny lift at Timberline, so they didn't open anything up for pretty much all of December, but I got some interesting warm-up footage of me from an actual camera, which is not something I ever see third person of me. That's me, but yeah, on the bunny lift. Went on the bunny chair, and that was something I hadn't been on in a few years, but I was pretty desperate to go snowboard. The season was so warm that I had to do my first day at Hoodoo Ski Resort, and then Timberline was just hot, freezing fog, iced, slush. There's pretty much nothing you guys want to see. So my first actual legit day of snowboarding was at Dodge Ridge, California. It was a pretty deep powder day, so it was a really good way to start the season. Sad thing is it literally was the first week of February, so January, not good conditions of riding. December, didn't snowboard at all. Actually had to pretty much drive to California from Oregon to get good powder. Ironic, usually that's not the case, but Dodge Ridge, barely any crowds. Crazy drive going up there. I mean, cars were sliding all over the place. The snow is just too deep for your typical California car, but if you were able to make it to the resort, it was pretty wild, pretty insane. This run was actually pretty steep, but you can't really tell because of the GoPro angle. But they had some pretty light snow, even though they were complaining saying it was heavy. It was definitely lighter than most of the snow that I rode in Oregon, but I would definitely go back to Dodge Ridge again if I could. It's on the Indy Pass, so maybe I will in the future. Then I hit up Brian Head, Utah. It was my first actual powder day there. Usually I'm always there on sunny days because Well, you know, it's Utah, it's high desert, it's the highest resort that they have in Utah. But I got first chair and just kind of rode the mountain for a few hours, and I mean, it seems like they actually have some steep runs. Most of the resort is actually pretty flat, but you can see there's definitely some steepness to a few sections of Brian Head. I don't even think they had their parks up and operational, but it was a pretty wild day. Not that crowded compared to other Utah resorts. And fun fact, I would say that Brian Head has the lightest and driest powder of any Utah resort because it's in the high desert, and there's usually spectacular views with red rocks and everything in the background, but on a powder day, you're not going to see that. So I would suggest if you're ever going to Brian Head, go on a sunny day and also go on a powder day. And then I had my first actual deep Arizona Snowbowl powder day. So it definitely didn't have that icy man-made snow. It got really crowded, so I had to leave. I mean, it got so tracked out, and the interstates actually started closing down, so I had to leave before they didn't allow any cars to even travel because I had to get to my next Arizona ski resort for the next day. So my little video that I made in Arizona was pretty short.
Powder day of my life is Snowbowl.
But the next day was definitely worth it because all of that Arizona powder kept building up at Sunrise Park Resort, which is massively less crowded than Arizona Snowbowl. Everyone in Phoenix goes up to Arizona Snowbowl. That's part of why it gets tracked out, because you just don't have the type of dedicated riders going up there, and they freak out just when they hear about snow because they're used to sunlight, and so you get some problems with that. Way more expensive there too. Imagine having a whole entire Bluebird powder resort to yourself. I mean, do you see anybody else hitting these runs? The snow was amazing at Sunrise, and I know that I've made some pretty controversial videos in the past talking about Sunrise Park Resort and it not being that good and management being bad, but their management has been turning around. And if you actually go when the snow is good, it's actually got better terrain than Snowbowl. I know that Snowbowl is just more convenient for everyone, and I will admit Snowbowl does have really good parks, way better terrain parks than the rest of the country. Not the best in the whole country, but Sunrise just didn't have any parks at all this year. But if you're just going for mountain riding, Sunrise is definitely the place to go. Then I hit up my next resort, which was Granby Ranch in Colorado, and this place, I kind of bagged on it, called it Chuck E. Cheese Ski Resort. Not trying to be mean, but it was definitely aimed more at families versus other big mega resorts. But they did have good groomers, and there were some steep runs that looked like they'd be good on a powder day. But I had to leave it and go up to Red Lodge, Montana. That was a pretty long drive to drive from Colorado all the way through Wyoming and then get up to Montana in one go through snowstorms. Red Lodge had some really fun groomers. They had some other good runs. Their park was still under maintenance, so I didn't get to ride that. And for some reason, the upper part of the mountain was more icy, so I didn't get to do these steep runs. But I would definitely go back on maybe a powder day because it was actually not that crowded at all. But Montana Snowbowl was definitely my favorite resort and the most underslept resort of the whole entire trip. Like, Montana Snowbowl had no crowds at all. Bluebird powder day, and they had super dry powder. I mean, it was lighter and fluffier than most of the snow that I've encountered in Colorado and Utah. I mean, you're just riding through the powder. They had some really good trees that are wide open, backcountry steepness. If you actually look on a trail map, the whole entire mountain is pretty much all black diamonds, but a few runs. So I guess I got really lucky because nobody went there. Luckily, it was a weekday, but nobody went there on a Bluebird blower pow day. Only downside with this resort is they pretty much had no terrain parks at all, like not even a jump, not a little tiny rail, nothing. But if you just want to go somewhere and ride some sparkly light blower snow that's going to just give you a face shot on every turn with plenty of steeps and a lot of variety and open terrain and just non-stop places to explore, then I would definitely recommend Montana Snowbowl in Missoula. I mean, it's literally like a 25-minute drive from Missoula, which is crazy because you think it'd be crowded with all the locals, it being in the top 5 biggest cities in Montana and there being a university there. But nope, nobody wanted to go up there. I mean, this clip right here was several hours after they had opened. I mean, right here, they had been open for about 3 hours, and there's just untouched powder lines and super fresh corduroy. I mean, when you're walking through the corduroy in the parking lot area, like your feet were just sinking in. So that was pretty amazing for a Montana Snowbowl. I did not expect that from a resort that close to a city. But then after my trip, I got back, big snowstorm hit, went to Mount Hood Meadows, and Heather Canyon was just insane. Super steep, waited like an hour, and then had to go back to Timberline. So here's Timberline, which is my local resort. Finally, I was able to do my first park riding tricks for the whole season because I just hadn't been hitting any parks, and somehow I just got in the groove and I got all of my tricks back that I had learned from the previous season, even the more difficult tricks that I had learned. And so I was on a roll, and it got me pretty hyped up. You know, I'm not the best park rider, but I had a pretty good day. But then I went to Hoodoo ski area, and Hoodoo was definitely amazing. This day was probably the best powder day that I've ever had at Hoodoo. I had to just go out with a bang for my last powder day because it was taking a beating on my gas mileage. The winter tires were just kind of slugging me back, so I decided to get rid of my winter tires and get my eco tires put back on my hybrid. So I was like, you know what, I'll just go somewhere that's really steep. And it was definitely worth it to go to Hoodoo on powder day. But then a nice spring day, got to go to Bogus Basin, Idaho. And sadly, L Stacker was busy and he wasn't able to pop up. And I just, you know, shredded through the mountain. Every year I gotta go because there's just some cool vibes from Bogus Basin. And as you can see, wide open groomers, epic blue views. Just like to go fast there. They have some steep double black diamonds and steep black diamonds, but those are better on powder days because some of the shaded spots get icy. And that fall hurt, and I pretty much had to leave after that one. But then in mid-April, Jonathan Buckhouse came to Oregon for a week. So we got to shred through some of the parks, and here's a few clips at the Timberline flow parks that they had. These are like the small and medium jumps, but they were still pretty fun. It was slushy, and I think this day was actually like really hot. It was almost like 80 degrees, which was really weird. So we started sticking and not even being able to ride after probably like an hour or two. I mean, we were having to unstrap on cat tracks. I had never seen something like that before in August. I meant April. But then cold front hit, and then it got really, really icy with not much fresh snow. So I went to Mount Hood Meadows the very next day. Total different day and night contrast for the conditions. But Meadows is definitely way steeper. I wouldn't hit it with it being that icy. But he went for it anyways, and it was kind of a letdown because Mount Hood Meadows has amazing deep, steep areas, and I mean, if you guys saw the Heather Canyon thing, it's usually pretty sick. But on icy days, definitely not a safe place to go. But surprisingly, it started warming up a lot later, and so the lower mountain had the parks kind of getting a little slushy. So upper mountain of Meadows was icy, but the lower mountain was getting into a slush park. So it was almost like riding two different resorts on the same day. Very bizarre, something I hadn't really seen that much at Mount Hood Meadows. But here's like a crazy snake run that he did. There were a few like gaps that you even had to go over. I don't think I would have tried it. I'm not really at that skill level to do that on the snake run. But towards the end, he kind of just flies out and has a pretty crazy fall because of so much momentum goes in there. And then the final day that he was in town, went to Timberline, and it was like a baby powder day. Got some cool park tricks, but the main thing was just kind of riding through the powder. Sad thing is Timberline's pretty flat, so not really anything fun to do with the powder. And as you can see, it wasn't really that steep. One of the best sections at Timberline, hence the name Timberline, if you do want a little bit of steepness, is in the trees, but it's not going to come close to any other resort. Then at the end of April, went to Arizona Snowbowl. Super icy. Decided to ride with my friend Garrett. We just goofed around trying to learn some butter tricks because the whole mountain pretty much wasn't rideable. But he filmed me do this little butter thing. I did some fake stees, but it opened up some opportunities. But then I went back to Timberline, and pretty much we had closing month at Timberline. I just had to focus on my park riding. And I mean, these people are insane. If you'd see, like, this is just like an everyday thing that you see during spring riding in May. Like, everyone's just doing back flips, front flips, 720s. And then here's goofy me just doing some dorky tricks because I'm not on their skill level, but you know, it was only my 4th year riding. I think I was a little proud of that, the nollie nose press with the nollie 180 out. And then closing week, I mean, this guy does this super crazy thing. Maybe I could try to learn that at the end of this coming season. There's some of the other tricks that I got. Tried to do the little Buckhouse slash, couldn't do that there. I was working on more of my butters and presses and actually trying to figure out where the like pressure point is on the board. And I got a little proud of this like nose blunt slide. And then on the final day, they put together this big massive box. Kind of hurt myself going over it. Only one other guy did it. I kind of stood there for 20 minutes and filmed it. Everyone else was getting wrecked except that guy. So I decided to just watch everybody else on closing day just go all out. I mean, the guy's doing this insane thing, and it's just all these crazy lines back to back of people that are sponsored, AM, semi-pro, or they're just insane to the membrane.
Literally warm up.
I mean, that was a steezy double shifty there. Even the skiers are insane too.
It's like a 60-foot jump, 40 to 60.
This jump's actually super
It's the
big.
biggest jump in the
I
whole
tried
park.
to do it once and my goggles exploded and came off, and I hurt my tailbone pretty bad. So it's gonna be a while before I try this jump. This is cell phone footage. So I mean, that was a pretty crazy trick right there. And then here's my goofy tricks at the end. Little slide thingy. And then again, I got better at working on my press points or whatever you call it, and was able to kind of do those spins. And I didn't show the footage, but I actually learned how to ride switch and worked on that this year. So next year it should be a little better with switch riding. But I got more board control this season.